Hello, and welcome back to the Outdoor Minimalist podcast. I'm your host, Meg Carney, an outdoor and environmental writer and author of the book Outdoor Minimalist: Waste Less Hiking, Camping, and Backpacking. The Outdoor Minimalist podcast has a goal to give listeners actionable ways to waste less hiking, camping, backpacking, and more during every step of their process. Your impact outdoors starts long before you hit the trail and goes beyond leave no trace ethics. You'll learn how to identify sustainable outdoor brands, how to ask hard questions regarding sustainability, and begin to shift and evolve your mindset to integrate minimalism into all of your outdoor pursuits. In episode 74 of the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, we are talking about litter and litter cleanups, specifically how you can start a cleanup near you. In one of my earliest episodes, I don't remember which number it is, but it is one of the 7 R's, and remove. The episode that covers the 7R remove. I interview Bill and Steve, founders of National Cleanup Day and Clean Trails, and in that episode we discuss the importance of picking up litter when we come across it on the trail, and kind of a lot of the concepts that revolve around how litter gets to certain locations and how land-based litter ends up in oceans and why we should continue to clean them up. So in this episode, we're kind of elaborating on a lot of those ideas and concepts, but instead we are focusing on how you can start a cleanup in your very own community. To guide us through this discussion, I had the pleasure of interviewing Brian Bell, the founder of Keep Virginia Cozy. Keep Virginia Cozy is a Richmond, Virginia-based nonprofit that is dedicated to conserving and preserving the natural landscapes and public lands of Virginia. And they do this in a variety of ways. They do this through litter cleanups that they host, as well as a variety of other community outreach programs. So he'll talk a little bit about how Keep Virginia Cozy got started, how he started cleanups, and how one individual was able to create a community-wide, statewide, and essentially nationwide movement to keep our trails even cleaner. Just as a reminder that our YouTube channel is still brand new, so thank you for all of you that have checked that out. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel as well as to our weekly newsletter if you want to continue to get weekly updates on podcast episodes, new releases on YouTube, and soon to be added to the newsletter will be interesting and sometimes slightly upsetting environmental news that I think all of you would love to read more about. So thanks for joining me today on the podcast, Brian. I have been looking forward to chatting about all things cleanups. But before we get to all of that, I'm going to ask you the question that I ask all of my guests, which is, how did you get involved in outdoor recreation and how does it fit into your daily life?
Yeah, I got involved with it because at a very young age, my parents used to take us camping, like car camping and stuff, growing up. And then I was in Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts, leading into Boy Scouts all the way through to my Eagle Scout and everything. So I've been participating in that heavily since, my early years all the way through the beginning of college and stuff. And then I just kind of, at that point, the spark was already a fire. So I just kind of stayed with it and stayed camping and hiking and I've just kind of tried now later in life to mold my life around things that keep me outside more, like with occupation and my nonprofit and all of that stuff. So yeah, started at a young age and still loving it.
Yeah, and you live in Virginia now and you grew up in Virginia, correct?
Yeah, over and live in Richmond now, but I grew up in Western Virginia over an area called Stanton, little town called Stanton, right, not too far from West Virginia actually, but when I say Stanton, no one knows where that is. So it's south of Harrisonburg, which is where JMU is.
Okay, awesome.
But,
I think I
yeah.
went through there at some point, but it sounds very familiar to me.
Yeah.
Probably close to like Shenandoah National Park-ish.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what would like the beauty of it. It was, 20 minutes from the southern terminus of Shenandoah and, 20 minutes from the northern terminus of the Blue Ridge Parkway. So if you were bored, it was just because you wanted to be. You could kind of just close your eyes and point and be outside somewhere in no time. You have the Allegheny Mountains were to the west and Shenandoah and the Blue Ridge to the east. So we had ample places to just kind of go explore and get lost for a few hours.
That's awesome. So what would you say your like number one outdoor activity is now as an adult?
Mm, I think my favorite one is like long distance backpacking. I really enjoy, little through hikes from here to there. And like I did Shenandoah just as a through hike about a year and a half ago, just from Front Royal to Rockfish Gap, because it's right here in our backyard. And this past May, I went over to Scotland with some friends and we did a backpacking trip from the Atlantic coast across the Highlands to the North Sea. So it was like 240 miles. Um, so that was cool because I really like the version everybody kind of becomes of themselves on like day three of a long distance backpacking trip, which is really great. But the outdoor activity I get to do the most, just because it's pretty at hand and easy to fit into my daily life, is trail running. We have some really great trails around the Richmond area for the James River Park system and a few others and stuff that are some pirate trails that are on the east end that weren't maintained by the park because they weren't made by the park, but it's some pretty good trail running out there. So I can slip out there and be on trail in 5 minutes from where I'm sitting right now and go run and then come back and log on for work. So it's pretty great.
Yeah, that's amazing. That sounds really fun. I'm not a huge long distance backpacker, but I do enjoy backpacking. And trail running's great training for backpacking. So it seems like
Yeah,
it all kind of fits together.
that's kind of
Um,
what I started doing it for because it was like, to keep myself in shape for long distance backpacking trips. And then purely by accident, I ended up really loving it. So I've stuck with it and kind of sought it out because I grew up, I played soccer and stuff growing up. And there's not really like there's running involved for sure, obviously, but there's not really consistent running involved because you're either standing still while somebody else is doing something on another part of the field, or you're in a dead sprint to like go be, in play somewhere. So I never really grew up caring for running, and so to be as avid as I am about it now, it's kind of a kind of surprised even myself.
yeah, I was the same way with trail running. I didn't think that I would like it because I always hated running, but trail running is really the only type of running that I enjoy. So it's a lot more mentally stimulating for me. And so I feel
Yep.
like I can be more engaged, which is really nice.
Yeah, same.
And you said that you kind of just integrated outdoor recreation into your life with the job that you have now and with your nonprofit, Keep Virginia Cozy. So how did that all kind of get started, and how did you get interested in integrating cleanups into all of that?
Yeah, so I used to work right out of college when I first moved to Richmond. I worked for an environmental engineering company and did that for several years, everything from working in the lab and running limits and finding out things like how much plastic is in the soil or like what the soil composition even is. And then working with environmental department and doing things like watershed remediation for old dams that had failed, that were built back in like the 50s, but there were no laws or no laws that anybody cared about back then. So now all the dams are falling apart now. So I got to kind of go out and do a wide array of fun environmental restoration work, and then also pairing that with being able to find out like what's in the dirt below my feet. And it was just really fun because earth science was my favorite class growing up. In high school, my science teacher, Mr. Lutt, like we still send emails back and forth and stuff now. And um, I loved it. So I was really fortunate to get that job. And then the scope of work started to change. They started taking contracts with like VDOT and waste management and stuff like that. And I just wasn't passionate about it, just like completely sucked the joy right out of it. And so I left. So I stopped that in 2016 and then started this nonprofit in 2017, the top of the year right after that. And it just kind of started off as, like I said earlier, we have such great trails like here in Richmond, and I'm always on them. And, a couple of my friends would want to join me on the weekend trips and go down to Texas Beach or go to Pony Pasture or do whatever. And there's always trash at these places. And I've just always packed trash out because I hate seeing it anyway. But then just, kind of by association, like friends I would go with would, start picking up trash and stuff themselves. And then it just kind of struck me. I was like, well, it seems like a fun way to, kind of two birds, one stone. Like we can get multiple people outside to places maybe they've never even been, that they live in the same city of. And then we're also giving back to an area. And I always knew from the start of it, obviously, many hands make light work. So I could go out and spend 10 hours in one spot by myself, or I could invite 20 friends and we all spend 3 hours and then we, hang out outside in the meantime. And it kind of gives you a cool way to, uh, connect to the spaces that we all have like accessible to us, but also clean them up. And leave them better for the people that are going there after us. So it just kind of started off as a random weekend warrior project, and somehow it became a fun thing. I don't really know what recipe we're selling to folks to get them to want to come back, but people keep showing up and they keep having a good time, and I keep loving seeing people outside and giving back and making an impact on an area, like because that's one of the fun things. It's so immediate. You show up and uh, you know not to devalue any other type of volunteer project. Like tree planting is great and like it needs to happen and all of this stuff. But you plant a sapling in October, it might be 15 years before that tree is like anything. Um, but these, we show up at a place at noon, and by 1:30, we've collected oftentimes multiple hundred of pounds of trash. So you've made like a very immediate impact on an area for the better. And it's really cool. And then people are a little bit more invested in that area. And I think by starting with the litter that we all see, it kind of leads you to being more caring about stuff that we might um, not initially think of, but you become more intertwined with an area once you've invested some time in it and stuff. So yeah, it just kind of started off as a little passion project, and then I just figured that if we became a 501c3, we could start doing things like actually getting donations, which was good because I'm not rich, so I can't really keep buying all that stuff. And we filed our paperwork in March of 2017. And July of that year, we got our notice that we were official, and it's kind of been forward steam from there. Yeah, so whatever that is, 5.5 years, 6 years or something.
Yeah, that's quite a
Um,
long time. And
yeah,
so is that all like I don't want to say that's all you do, but is that the main focus of Keep Virginia Cozy is to kind of facilitate those community and trail cleanups, or do you do other types of outreach as well?
yeah. Excuse me. We do other types of outreach as well. The thing about it is like litter is always present, right? Like it's always on the it's just you see it, right? Like if there's a Carl's Jr. box on the sidewalk, you're going to notice it. Um, so those are a pretty quick way for us to get traction. Like in new neighborhoods or new communities and stuff, we can show up and do a litter cleanup there, and it's a good way to get in front of a lot of people and get more people outside with us. Because they see it and they're like, oh yeah, thank you for doing that, and then somebody will say, you could do it too, and they're like, oh yeah, I guess I could, and then they grab a bag and they come join us. So that's probably like most of our pie, right? But I do have some friends who are educators, and I have some other friends who, have businesses in the outdoor industry and stuff here. So we get to pair them with fun things like on April of every year, we go out to Tuckahoe Montessori School and we do native wildflower seed balls with these kids. So we get some clay from this, non-colored, it's essentially non-colored Play-Doh. It's all organic and stuff. And we get local, non-invasive pollinator supporting like wildflower seeds from a local nursery. And we go out there with these kids and we, tell them all about it and what they're doing, like why it's important to have, local pollinator support, stuff like that. And then they get to make these fun little shapes and put some seeds in them and stuff, and then take them home, throw them out. So we're trying to restore wildflowers in an area that's not just another decorative plant, being planted. We build bat houses, and we team up with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, and we teach kids why local bats are important instead of just dousing your yard with some chemical to kill a bunch of mosquitoes. And it's fun things like that, because that's also pretty selfishly fueled. Those are things I enjoy. So
Mm.
if we could teach kids about, it's part of a Wildlife Wednesday program that we came up with. And if we can get folks excited about nature and not scared of possums and wanting to, do more preservation based projects, I think that would be a cool thing to do. Those are admittedly like maybe 10% of our pie, because they take more planning. There's
Mhm.
more moving parts. Friends of mine are very generous with their time because I've got a good friend who's a wildlife biologist, a couple of them actually, and I've got a friend who runs the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries here in Virginia, or Department of Wildlife Resources now. And so when we do these bat box things, DWR will actually sponsor them with a grant for like environmental education. So, we'll get some money from them to get the supplies, and then they'll provide a biologist, this lady Susan Watson. She's fantastic, and she knows all things bats. And so she shows up day of, and she's wearing like bat T-shirts and bat earrings, and like has a bat, like just all decked out for it and stuff, and gets the kids really excited about it. And those are really fun. But yeah, long story, much longer. Litter collection is 90% of what we do, and then 10% is the outreach projects with fun things like all the stuff I just described. But I would really like to make it more of an even 50-50 kind of mix in time, because I enjoy the other side of it a little bit more than just trash every weekend.
Yeah, I could see that. Having a bit more of a balance could be really nice, but
Yeah.
you're still kind of a young nonprofit, so there's plenty of time to grow and change as time goes on. And so we'll return to the cleanup, since that's kind of like the topic of today's episode. And
Cool.
I've talked about cleanups and litter a lot on the podcast before. Like we had the guys from National Cleanup Day on in an early episode. So it's not a topic that listeners are unfamiliar with. And you mentioned kind of like that instant gratification or the immediate impact of a litter cleanup. But are there other really important environmental impacts to cleaning up litter in a natural environment?
Yes, is the answer. So I'm trying to think of some of the ways that those things might be, like what you see, right? We all like to show up to a park that doesn't have dog poop bags and diapers all over it and stuff, so like there's an immediate positive impact as far as like, what you see visually goes. And then the trickle down effect, right? Like if we can stop litter before it gets to a creek, then we're stopping it before it gets into the river, and then we're stopping that, all down the line and stuff. So wildlife benefits from it. That's kind of one of the crazy things even I've learned is some of the projects we've tried to do. We have to do research before we can even put them in, just because of how impactful they could be. Like we tried to make we actually still have it, like a gill net to catch litter going down Reedy Creek before it gets to the James River. And myself included at the time, like a lot of folks, one of the things we thought of was like, oh, we'll just put a net on it, hang it there, and it'll stop the trash. We'll empty it out every now and then, whatever. But one of my friends who's a wildlife biologist was like, well, we need to make sure we get the right size net so we can still allow for like fish migration. We need to make sure that we're not inhibiting species in the creek from being able to do what they would normally do anyway if there wasn't a motor oil bottle like floating beside them and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely like once you start pulling at that thread, you start to realize like how connected everything actually is.
Yeah, so even those small little acts where like you're on a daily walk and you see some rubbish going in a storm drain, like that
Yeah.
has the trickle down effect, and it could end up somewhere at some point that has a much larger impact than in the city. So that makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
Yeah. Richmond actually did a really cool thing here. It's a pretty artistic city. We have a lot of gifted muralists and painters and artists in general. And they teamed up with, I guess it was the James River Association, or I might be misspeaking, I'm not sure, but some city component teamed up with some nonprofit in regards to river health and the Chesapeake Bay, because they're right here. But they've all decorated the tops of all the storm drains, like through areas like high foot traffic areas, like Carytown and stuff like that. Where it's like it's exactly that. It's a picture of an otter sitting on a rock, and like he's holding a sign that says like your river starts here, or something like that. Because it's just a lot of people don't think about it. They're like, oh, the trash can's full, like whatever, stuff it underneath this empty hole. But it's a direct conduit straight to the river. So if we can start to get more people to realize that, I think we might have a little bit more responsible like action taken as far as what goes in them.
For sure. I love that. Art has a really big impact in how people act and behave in certain environments. So that's really cool. Okay. So Your focus obviously is Virginia and primarily the Richmond area. And a lot of the listeners are in the United States, like spread out across the United States and some in different areas of the world. And so they're not really going to come to Virginia and help you on any cleanups. Well, maybe that would be nice, I guess, but
That'd be cool.
it seems like kind of far to get there. Anyway, so how can they start to get more involved in these types of activities where they are located?
Yeah, great question. I am definitely not an expert. I am just the exact product of, if you want something, just kind of start doing it. And that's somehow we've gotten here. But to other people's benefit, I also sit on the board of directors of this really great nonprofit that's based in Tennessee. That's where that's actually the board meeting I had last night. But that's my friend Benny. They live in Tennessee, but their scope is nationwide and soon to be like transatlantic because we've gotten teamed up with a group out of Croatia that hosts these long distance backpacking hikes and stuff. But it's called Responsible Stewardship. That's the name of the nonprofit. So if folks want to learn how to start where they are, he's done a great job of kind of setting up a program to basically make it as easy as it could possibly be. We do things like send out gloves, send out high vis vests. So when you're like working around high traffic areas, right? Like you're safe allegedly or safer because people can see you. And we send out reusable bags because one thing that they've adopted, which I love, is something we implemented last year where we are fully zero waste, by the way. So we have our litter hauled away after we weigh the bags and empty them out. But I use the empty grain bags from Vossen Brewery here in town. And those are the bags we collect our trash in because they can hold so much weight, glass doesn't rip them, and they can be cleaned out, just rinsed out and then reused for a very long time before they need to be recycled and retired. But we'll send out bags and gloves and vest and a banner from Responsible Stewardship anywhere you are. And all you've got to do is just go outside and start using the tools, and then social media is ever present. Everybody's got the stuff in their pocket for it. So all you have to do is take a picture and then, tag them in it. And then you take your friends outside, just, invite your partner, invite whatever, just go outside and do it. And then by, repetition, things start to catch on. So more people will join you. Maybe people put it on their own Facebook or something like that. But yeah, we have it all set up for kits. So all you have to do is request one and we'll send it out to you through the Responsible Stewardship nonprofit. And then you can start wherever you are. But
Perfect,
if you do come to Virginia, we're here.
Awesome. I will be sure to link to that in the show notes. So if people want to check it out, they can do that really easily. Trying to think. So once they get the equipment, and even if they don't get the bag and setup and stuff from you guys, which it sounds really awesome because I love the idea of that reusable bag, how do you think you were able to make it a habit? How did you, because not everyone wants to like go out on a hike and like focus on the trash and like that negative aspect. And so how were you able to kind of like reframe that to be like, okay, today, this weekend, I'm going to go out here and pick up this trash instead of I want to go on a nice hike and kind of just check out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And the honest answer is I have no idea. Because to be completely honest, like I don't actually go out on a hike like focused on the litter either, right? Like that's just an unfortunate byproduct of actually trying to go seek solitude somewhere and knowing that this great viewpoint I'm on probably has a Gatorade bottle stuffed underneath this rock. So while I'm here, I might as well take a look and see. And if there is one, I'll just pack it back out so it's not there for the next person. I don't really know. I think like it's an interesting question to think on because like maybe one of the things that people enjoy from our cleanups, if I'm looking at it from an outsider's perspective, is, we don't lie to them, right? Like they know they're coming to a litter cleanup, like there's going to be trash that's collected. And the main point is to leave a green space better than it was when we got there, or a neighborhood or whatever, better than it was when we got there. But I think maybe I might carry over the vibe that I carry when I go hiking too, where it's like, I'm going to go do this 13-mile hike in Shenandoah because I know that it's a gorgeous hike and that's my entire focus. But if I get up there to the top and there's a Snickers wrapper and like a other garbage, like I always am just gonna have a bag on me or something, so I'll pack it out or I can stuff it in my side pouch or whatever. So the focus is the nature, and the secondhand part of that is, if you see litter, once you see it, it kind of becomes your responsibility, right? It might not be our trash, but it is our space. So if you leave it there, I get it. Like there's been times when I couldn't physically get a piece of trash out, right? Like you might be back miles and miles and miles, and for some reason there's like a washing machine or something. You know what I mean? Like it's not,
Yeah.
it's there's times, right? For sure. But if you want something to change, like without being just like very blunt about it, like you have to do something to make that happen. And picking up trash is the fastest, like if it's there and it bums you out, like you're like, oh, I did this hike because I wanted to be outside and whatever. I didn't want to see this person's like beer choice from Friday, whatever. But now I did see it, right? And I don't want the next person to have to see it, and I don't want to see it if I come back here. So I'm going to take it with me. Like it's a bummer, but I'm going to take it with me. So if you want change, you kind of have to start it yourself. Uh, if there's not an organization already in place, like setting up a litter cleanup there for the following weekend, it's kind of, we all have to do our part to just kind of get the ball rolling. Because, like I said earlier, many hands make light work, but also like it's a domino effect, right? Like if we start going out and you just become cognizant of it and you're like, oh, I'll pack it out, no big deal, like whatever, like it just happens. Like you also become really good at seeing it, because then you start to like know where to look when you're hiking around, and like you cut to look under rocks like on accident, like you're just like, oh crap. But it's yeah, it's just one of those things. Like the truth of the matter is, like if you want it differently, like you've got to start picking it up and doing it yourself. Like, but I never go out to focus on the trash. I don't wake up saying like, oh, I wonder what like the crappiest hike I can do is today, and like whatever. I always go out for the nature, and then I always come back with the trash.
Okay. Yeah, just kind of reframing it in that way. One thing that I am curious about is kind of, I don't know if this is the right phrase for it, but I guess like the bystander effect type of thing, where you're kind of like, you might notice it, but in your head, you're like, oh, someone else will do it, so I don't need to do it. And I
Right.
think a lot of people kind of fall into that, especially if they live in an area that has frequent trash cleanups, or maybe it's a park. And so they assume a park ranger is going to do that, or a trail maintenance crew is going to do that. So I guess how, or what advice did you have for people to kind of like stop doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing. Like I was just saying, like if like the reason that trash is out there is most likely because people have that thought process, right? Like someone sees it and they're like, oh, that's good, someone else will pick it up. Like, and then everybody who passes that piece says that, and that's why that beer can's been there for 12 years. Like someone has to be the person that picks it up. Like you're just gonna have to, not accept it as a next time. Just be like, the buck stops with me. I got to pick it up. Even if you don't like want a full backpack of trash, because I completely understand not wanting that. If every single person just went out and like brought home one piece, right? Maybe they saw 10 pieces, but they're like, you know what? Like I can deal with the Gatorade bottle. And they picked up the Gatorade bottle. Like that's a small enough change and a start that it would make a huge impact if everybody thought that way, instead of being like, oh, this is job security for the environmental team at Public Works, right? Like
Mhm.
we've definitely had some folks, like I've made eye contact with people at cleanups who are like cleaning out their car in a parking lot, and they see me with a bag and they open their side door and they just push stuff out and then shut their door and then drive away. And I'm like, okay, like, like I'm here, I'm going to pick it up now because I saw that happen. But like, it's interesting that that's what you chose to do rather than just, go throw it away somewhere. But
Yeah.
yeah, kind of weird.
Yeah, the psychology of littering is something that I've wanted to learn more about. But when you are someone and you're out doing it alone, like I tend to like hike and bike and do a lot of things alone. So I'm really comfortable doing that. But if you're not comfortable going out there alone, what were some of the things that you did to kind of start to organize the cleanups in your area? So you have a group
Yeah.
of people, or maybe even just a pair.
Yeah, great question. Um, I suppose a lot of what I did was kind of just, I started within my own friend base and just asked around like, hey, does anybody want to go down to Shiplock Park this weekend? Like, I think that's where I'm going to go hang out. If anybody wants to come, you know, that's where I'll be. And we'll just kind of leave it at that. And then if anybody reached out, or whatever, I would always have, um, like the Boy Scout in me won't let me not have like supplies, just an extra pair of something just in case. So I'd always have like 2 bags or whatever. So if someone did come, they're like, we can pick up trash, or they can have a bag to start their own trash thing and stuff, and we'll pack it out. But it was more like, really, it was just more focused on getting outside somewhere pretty, and then like it was just known that if there's trash there, we're going to bring it back with us. We're not going to leave it for the next person. But I think I'm also someone who's comfortable doing a lot of stuff by myself, and I do a lot of stuff by myself. But to me, it's like a very therapeutic process, almost like very zenful, right? Like I can go put in a podcast and walk around and just pick up trash, and it's not hard, right? Like the work is hard. It's like hard work to do a lot of that stuff, and it's good, but like you don't have to be trained to like go pick up trash. You just have to do it. So I can easily zone out for like hours with a podcast and just like going on like a walk around town or something like that, and pick up some stuff, and then have made an entire afternoon out of it. But I think you could just start it off as easily as something as like finding a new place you wanted to go, and see what friends of yours felt like going with you. And you get to, because that's one thing that's been really cool. Like we've been doing these ones around Richmond, and a lot of folks that come to the cleanups are Richmond people. They've been here their whole life, right? And they're my age, they're in their mid-30s, and they're like, oh, I've never been to Pump House Park before. And I'm like, oh, wild, and so they use coming to our cleanup as an excuse to explore a new part of town. And it's just yeah, I don't know. You just have to get outside first. Like I will always advocate for just like go explore, right? It's really fun to get lost for a little bit and then like kind of see what you find.
In a safe way. Don't
And
actually get
I mean,
lost.
yeah,
People are
yeah, or just like have the right stuff with you in case you do get lost. It's gonna be
yeah.
fine. Um, but yeah, it's exploration is a good start. But yeah, this day and age for sure, buddy system up on everything. Like there's like creepers everywhere, people on trail just being weirdos,
Mm-hmm.
people on sidewalks just being weirdos, just weird people in general, right? You don't have to be in the woods for that to happen. That can just like be like on your own driveway. But there's for sure a little bit of truth about the whole safety and numbers thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely advocate for people who are not as comfortable with the solitude aspect, to always have a partner with them, or always like at least at the bare minimum, even if you're with partner, like let them know where you're going to be, let someone else know where you're going to be, for that. But our cleanups are a little bit different because we get a lot of folks, which is pretty rad. We average about 40 people per cleanup, which is great. It's about 38 more people than I thought we would ever have, like coming to cleanups consistently, which is really cool. But everybody comes, even if you come solo, right? You find kind of your group, your pod, your vibe, people you enjoy being around. And then like these just natural, like herds occur, right? People go off this way because they want to see the creek, and they talk to the people who did the same thing. And this pod wanted to go this way. So, as cohesive as the large group is, it's also really cool to just kind of see it break off and become their own little, subgroups or whatever, and get to know people that way.
Yeah, it sounds like a good way to meet people too. Like if you know that there is a cleanup happening in your area, it could be a good way if you're not comfortable going to do it alone, or if you want to get into hiking, even to meet people that would also like those activities that you can start to go with on a regular basis.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's been really cool because I don't know, doing podcasts, right? I guess it shines a little bit of light on the back end of it. So more people know who I am in association with it now. But for a long while, they didn't. And I really enjoyed like the kind of anonymity that came with, like, because I'm at every cleanup too. I'm also outside with them, right? Like if anybody, like I might be the first one in the creek going after some trash or something. So a lot of folks didn't used to know, and I kind of enjoyed it. And so just hearing how people found out about it through Instagram, or how people like learned about it through like a first date that happened before. People would like show up for their first date as like an outdoor space, right, with lots of people around and like whatever and all that stuff. So it's been really cool to kind of hear what people use it for, all the while everyone using it for like the betterment of the community and leaving spaces better than we found it. But yeah, it's definitely been, I've heard some really cool inception stories for how people come to find us because they learned about it on Meetup and they wanted to get outside, or they wanted to, like, the first date thing, like they wanted to meet out in a public place and like they chose a litter cleanup, which is hilarious. And um, it's been really fun to kind of learn like what brings people to it and then what brings people back. Like that's been really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. If it sounds like you have done a really good job and worked really hard to kind of like build that camaraderie and kind of a good energy around cleanups, which I love. And I want to know, and the listeners want to know, how they can learn more about you and Keep Virginia Cozy and keep up with the story.
Yeah. I mean, if they want to learn more about me, they should come to a cleanup. That would be really cool. Because it'd be, not only would they get to learn more about me if they wanted to talk and ask, I guess, they also are going to get, 35 new friends out of it too. Because every single person who shows up is, the nicest people you'll ever meet. And they, the other thing too is like we've all gone to groups before. Like, I moved to Richmond and I found some stuff on meetup.com when you first move here where it's like keywords, right? It's like, oh, I like outdoors and hiking and craft beer or whatever, right? And then like it auto populates 3 groups, but then you show up and it's like kind of feels stale and cold and like, kind of clicky or something like that. And you're like, this is weird. Like this isn't supposed to feel this way because this is a meetup group. We're supposed to meet up, but ours, yeah, like everybody that shows up here, like, hey, how are you? Like, how'd you hear about it? What got you here? Blah, blah, blah. Or a lot of people know each other because it's Richmond, and there's never like if you show up by yourself, you're never going to feel like an outsider or like not welcome, right? Which is one thing I've really loved. And that's just from like my perspective, watching other people interact. Because a lot of times, like I'm at the table weighing the trash and I can hear satellite conversations going on about, like, hey, like when we're done with this, like, why don't we go get lunch or something together and all this stuff. And like, so these people, like all of our people are hanging out outside of this. It's just really cool that this is like kind of the communal event that they all, choose to have fun with and then go about their own way. So to learn more about me, come to a cleanup, or you can follow along on our Instagram, which is just at Keep Virginia Cozy, all spelled out, or our website. It's just keepvirginiacozy.org. We have a bunch of pages on there that kind of break down individually what we do, what we've done in the past, that kind of thing. So we got an Instagram because people said we needed one years ago, and then we got a Facebook because they said we needed that. I never thought we were going to need any of it. And now we have like multiple ways to exist in the social media world. So you can follow our Instagram, hit our Facebook, or if you go to our website, you can sign up for our newsletter, which comes out quarterly-ish, because I write those and I don't write them as often as I should. So it's a quarterly-ish newsletter. But yeah, there's lots of ways to learn.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be sure to link to your website and all your socials in the show notes so people can check that out there. And with that, I'm just happy that you had the time to jump on the podcast and share your story and your advice so people could get outside and clean up a little bit of trash.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's been a really fun 6 years of doing this so far, and I'm looking forward to more, but it's always fun to connect with folks like you who are shining light on stuff going on a community level. It's really cool. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening, and if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book or subscribe to our weekly newsletter at theoutdoorminimalist.com for even more updates, educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with the shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.